None too shabby for sure. 50 former players have been picked in the first round of the Common Draft era, including Vinny Testaverde, you heard of him, in Russell, Maryland. 8 former Hurricanes have been elected to the Hall of Fame. Ray Lewis in 2018. Ed Reed will be inducted next weekend. And no school has had more Pro Bowlers in the Common Draft era than Miami. 4 players made it from 2004 alone, including Sean Taylor and our own Jonathan Vilma. Lewis.
This team is stacked. I mean, from top to bottom. Look at the quarterback. Jim Kelly, Adrian James, Frank Gore. Okay, I think we can win with those guys. Michael Irvin and Andre Johnson, Jeremy Shockey. But the offensive line is maybe where you can have some debate about whether or not it's going to stack up against some of the other schools that we're going to see here when we really pare this thing down. But those first group, the quarterbacks, wide receivers, as good as get on defense, but this is just sick. Warren Sapp, Cortez Kennedy, Vince Wilfork, Calais Campbell. I think you'll win some games there. You maybe, arguably had, maybe some people would say one of the greatest linebackers, if not the greatest linebacker of all time, is Ray Lewis. John Vilma scouted him, worked with him. John was about as smart and as well-rounded of a linebacker as this game has ever seen. And in the secondary, we already know. This kid right here was the standard and will remain the standard. Antrell Roll, Philip Buchanan, Ed Reed. Ed Reed, he's the ultimate thief. The ultimate thief in the history of the league. Look, I could just sit here and just keep talking back and forth about these guys forever. That right there.
You say that we beat Ohio State.
Is a tough university right there.
But listen, we have somebody else who seems an appropriate time to welcome in Miami head coach Manny Diaz. Coach, a lot of people thought Tim Hasselbeck had a makeover, but no.
Oh, yeah. That he grew hair. Yeah.
Suddenly things are looking up for Tim. But in fact, listen, we're glad to have you. When you look at these guys, dare we ask you to weigh in here and talk about tradition.
Yeah.
A group that has produced at the next level.
I'd like to coach them.
Yeah, I'm sure. You'd be a pretty good coach.
A lot better coach. But, to me, look, a lot of schools have a lot of great players, but you're talking about GOATs on that board right there. And I know that term gets thrown out a lot. But when you're talking about best ever do it, you talk about a Ray Lewis, you talk about the best ever do it, you talk about a Sean Taylor, like you were mentioning, and Ed Reed. These are people who changed the way that the game has been played. And I'll tell you the real thing, and Jonathan knows this, the people that are mad that they're not on this list, the too deep, number 12 through 22 on both sides of the ball, because there'll be a lot of hurt feelings now, because there are some big time names that are left off that list as well.
Well, Coach Lewis, at some point, it's a bracket, right? So when you have a bracket, somebody has to advance. He's going to choose between these two. Before I ask you to choose, I don't even think I should. We know where you'll land there, but what do you think when you look at Ohio State?
They certainly have some outstanding players there as well.
Oh, I'm not hearing the same level of it. Say so? Okay, all right, you know what? We'll let you off the hook. You don't need that. I think we get it.
They all have great personalities.
How do you, it would seem. Ryan, what stands out to you?
Well, what stands out to me, honestly, is the secondary. And you heard Coach talk about the GOATs. There are some players that you put in the conversation of being the greatest that have ever played the position. And when you can say that about one school, right? When you look at the quarterbacks, you mentioned Vinny Testaverde and those who were drafted. He's not the quarterback on this team because Jim Kelly is. And I think when you start to talk about people who changed the game, Warren Sapp, right? It went from you looking from the big lug that plugged the holes to a guy that can get upfield and get to the quarterback. And so many of these players from Miami changed the game. It's not in any way to say, because one of my favorite people of all time is Dick LeBeau. And he would tell us every meeting, how many interceptions he had. But he was a greater man and a greater coach. But for me to have to go the other way means that the people on this side of the board, the Miami, the U team, is just different. It's just a different collection of players.
Go ahead. No, I was just, what kind of hits me as you look at these is that I lined up against so many of these guys and played against them, and you knew they were good then. You just didn't realize these guys were making imprints on history. And as Manny just pointed out, seriously, you're right. GOAT is thrown around too much. Right. But there are guys here who you tell me in the history of football, would Warren Sapp be in the conversation, being one of the best three safeties ever? Of course. Would Sean Taylor be in the conversation, being the best safety ever? Of course he would. Mike Orr, one of the best wide receivers ever? Of course he would. And this is just one school now. This is one school.
Yeah,
Ted Hendricks. This guy was he was way ahead of his time when he played for the Raiders.
Listening to John talk about the people who aren't on there is actually what even sells it more.
I think you're right. That's a great
Russell,
point.
Maryland, Jerome Brown, Dan Morgan,
I mean, the list goes on and on that you can talk about all these other guys. Vinny Testaverde at quarterback. We didn't even mention Portis.
Right.
We didn't mention
running back
Willis.
who they had
We
when you
didn't
were
mention,
there.
I'm telling you, man, we had guys.
Jonathan, obviously you had an incredible career of your own, but how much pride is there to have played with a lot of these guys, against them, with them, practiced, that you come from the same place when you look at that list?
Man, I tell you what, I'll never forget my first practice against, I had DJ Williams that was there with me, a linebacker, and I went against Edgerrin James. I went against Portis in practice, and I remember my first phone call after practice. I called my dad, and my dad was like, "So, how'd it go?" And I was like, "I don't know." I was about 190 soaking wet, and I remember my dad saying, just keep going, don't worry about it, it's okay. I was like, "Dad, they're all big and they're fast."
Welcome, my friend. Coach, let me ask you this on a serious note. What's the biggest challenge returning now and getting ready for your first season to a program where much is expected because much has been accomplished?
Yeah, getting our guys to play to that standard.
Yeah.
And understanding how it happened. Those guys are on that board, and they have all said it. Any opportunity they've had a chance to talk to our team, they're there because of their work and the way. Because what's amazing about that board, you're talking about the 80s on now.
Right.
We don't have the history going back to some of the names on the Ohio State. I think other than Hendricks and Otto, everyone on that board is 81 and more recently, and a lot of those guys, like Jonathan said, got each other better on Green Tree practice field, and that level of competition. And then when guys left and holding the other guys to that same standard, that's what makes Miami a little bit unique, a little bit different. I want our guys to feel that. I want them to feel that standard.
Have you had a number of these players come back and talk to your current team?
We do all the time, and because they get recruited there, they want it when they're getting recruited. I want them to feel it when they're there. Yeah. Don't just pick the school because of Jonathan Vilma. Now you got to hear from them, because if you're not performing, I can tell you, but it's a lot better when it comes from a guy like him.
Sure. All right, Lewis, you drew the short straw. You got to pick this one.
Yeah, I think this one for me is easy, and no disrespect to Ohio State, but Miami wins this one. There's just too many good football players there, 1 through 22 on both sides of the ball. The only area where if you wanted to cast any stones on Miami would be the offensive line, just because then you're not talking about those guys in the greatest of all time conversation, and that's the only reason. Well, I mean, okay, the rest of this group, you're right. I mean, it's Jerome Brown.
Yeah.
Wasn't on that.
Brown,
wasn't on that. Dan Morgan, I remember scouting Dan Morgan and saying this. If Dan Morgan hadn't got hurt in Carolina, Dan Morgan was Luke Kuechly before there was Luke Kuechly. And he may have been better because he was a hammer and could run. And the guy seemed like he was in the huddle of the other team every snap, because I was like, why is he always at the spot point of attack every single time? Now he's a fine scout. He may be a GM someday. That's a great university.
Well, we've got 2 more to go through, and then ultimately we'll crown a winner. But Coach, we want to say thank you. I know it's about to be a very busy time for you, so we appreciate you being here.
We're about to get it. Thanks for having me.
It's coming quick. Also coming quick is training camp. The reigning NFL